All right, in this lesson, we're going to talk about prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are some of the oldest cell types around. They are also one of the smallest cell types. So if you remember your definition of a prokaryote, that a prokaryote is a type of cell that lacks membrane-bound organelles. So they lack membrane-bound organelles. And remember, they're classified under the domains archaea and bacteria. And we're primarily going to be focused on domain bacteria because they include the pathogens that healthcare providers must identify and treat. So far, the archaeans actually haven't been linked to human diseases. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on the archaeans then, but we will kind of here and there kind of pick out some differences between the bacteria and the archaeans since they're both comprised of prokaryotic cells, but just to kind of get an idea of what separates them out between these two domains. All right, but for right now, we're going to discuss the morphological features of bacteria. And there's a caveat to this, though, when we talk about the morphological features, kind of the shape of the bacteria. There is kind of growing evidence that the life stage, the environment, how many, the different nutrients that are available, and even the presence of certain antimicrobial drugs can affect the morphology of prokaryotes. It can, in other words, all these conditions can affect the shape and the arrangement of the bacteria. So bacteria, therefore, can take different forms. And this is what we call pleomorphic or pleomorphism. So I have a picture here of chicken eggs, and it's kind of the same thing with chickens, right? Chicken eggs can come out in different shapes, and it just depends upon the health of the chicken and the different nutrients in the food that the chicken has been given. It can affect the shape of the egg that the chicken produces. So you see kind of a very round egg versus a more oblong egg. So the shapes of eggs can vary dependent upon how the chicken has been treated and how the health of the chicken, as we said. So it's a little bit like bacteria. Bacteria can take on different shapes dependent upon the nutrients in its environment, whether it's affected by antimicrobial drugs. So they can take on different shapes or different variations. And this is what we call pleomorphism. Now, it doesn't mean that all bacteria do this. Some are very pleomorphic, have a wide variety of shapes like Helicobacter pylori, which causes stomach ulcers. They tend to have several different forms, and others tend to stick to just one form or one shape. Now, we're going to talk about the main shapes that are typical, but there are far more shapes than what we're just going to mention here. So we can have a very spherical shape or spherical bacteria that are called cocci or coccus, which is singular. So you can see they're very kind of oval or round in shape, and some can be a little bit more oblong, right? But typically, if they have this kind of spherical shape, we tend to call them cocci. Now, we can arrange these spherical cells in combination. So you can have a single coccus, or you can have two that are paired together, and we would call it a diplococci. Or you can have four of them joining together, kind of as you see down at the bottom here, to form four in a group. That is a tetrad. And you can see they can form more of a cube-like structure and have more than four, kind of 8 cells together, and that would be what we call a Sarcinia. And Sarcinia is actually also a genus name for bacteria, some bacteria that are found in the human upper intestines. Um, and they can also form straight chains. So they can be kind of joined end to end, and this is what we would call a streptococci. Um, so if you've heard of streptococcus, that's where the name comes from, the fact that we've got these spherical cells that are joined end to end. Or we can have staphylococci. So that is more of a looser arrangement where we always say it looks like a cluster of grapes where the cells are joined together. So this cluster or irregular formation has the prefix of staphylo. So if you've heard of staphylococcus, right, that's describing this cluster-like irregular shape of spherical cells. So we use these prefixes diplo, staphylo, strept to describe these arrangements of cells. We can also have a little bit more cylindrical shape, and this is called a bacillus or bacilli. So they're much more drawn out, elongated cells that you see. Ones that are a little bit more shorter compared to the other bacilli, we might call it a cocobacillus instead, kind of halfway between your cocci and your bacillus, but it's still a little bit more oblong than round for a coccus. Now, with the bacilli, we can also use the same types of prefixes where we can have a single bacillus or we can have diplobacilli, two of them joined end to end, all right, where they would be, attached to each other. Or you can have a chain of them, and that would be a streptobacilli. And we don't really use the term staph for the bacilli because of that irregular cluster. Instead, they use the term palisade. So palisade actually refers to kind of a fence made of wooden stakes. It's kind of an old-timey term. But it refers to cells or kind of like a chain of cells that are attached to each other. And so these are showing palisades. And it's not a very regular palisade, but usually they're attached at one end and then another one will be attached at the opposite end. And so they may kind of form like these W or V-like patterns from it. Now, besides the palisade, all right, we also have a very, so besides the, the bacillus, we can have some bacilli that are a little bit more comma shaped or kind of curved, and this is what we call vibrio. So they're elongated like the bacillus, but they have a curve on one side to their body, and it's called vibrio. And there's also the genus Vibrio. We have Vibrio cholera, and you're seeing some of the Vibrio here. This is Vibrio vulnificus, which you can find in salt water that can infect open wounds if you go in salt water. So this is also another type of cell shape. Then we have spirilla or spirillum. These are bacteria that have a corkscrew shape to them, so they're slightly curved or coiled, and they can form short chains. They can join end to end to form a chain, but that's kind of it as far as the arrangements go for these spiral shaped ones. So you have spirillum, which are slightly coiled, versus a spirochete, which typically has a more tightly coil to it. So we say it resembles more of a spring to it, a spirochete. And spirochetes tend to occur just by themselves, just a single cell. They don't tend to attach and make different types of arrangements for the spirochetes. So as you can see, these bacteria form a wide variety of different shapes. So we have the cocci, the bacilli, the spirilla, the vibrio, and spirochetes.